The Mandanenwaise, a tale from the Rhinelands and the Missouri River Valley, published 1865, was Balduin Möllhausen's fifth novel. The author, inappropriately called the German Cooper, does set his story at the American frontier, but the plot does not originate there. Unlike Cooper and most of his imitators, Möllhausen not only tells about the migration into the far west, but also about the political reasons which made migration necessary in the first place. Following the protagonist's changes of character, it also contains elements of a coming-of-age tale, or Bildungsroman as it's called in Germany. The novel itself is divided into two parts. The first part takes place in the Rhinelands in Germany. It is Möllhausen's own birthplace and familiar ground not only for him, but also for his readers. Yet within this first part, Möllhausen manages to set up a mystery, which is going to find its surprising solution in the novel's second part, set far away in the American West. Only a handful of his over 40 novels would follow this specific structure, among them 1865's The Mandanenwaise and 1880's The Treasure of Quivira. Yet this type of novel is the one he became best known for, probably because it had famous imitators, among them both his rival Karl, but also his friend the famous Prussian novelist Theodor Fontane, who lived from 1819 to 1898, probably known to you for having been adapted for film by Rainer Werner Fassbinder and others. In this slideshow, we shall retell the plot of the novel and tell you about its historical and political background. Since it is, among other things, a coming-of-age tale, we shall also compare it to the most famous coming-of-age novel or Bildungsroman of the time, 1795's Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. To give you something to watch while I am summarizing, I will show you the illustrations that were added by his editor 1 year after Möllhausen had died. They were drawn by the illustrator Adolf Wald, who had worked for the Karl Verlag before. He had been drawing commercial flyers and postcards for Karl May's novels, as well as illustrations for Henry Rider Haggard's Allan Quatermain adventures. Möllhausen had no say and no influence on these illustrations at all because he was dead. After the success of Karl May's illustrated novels, Möllhausen's editors tried to copy that success. It did not work. Until now, Karl May had copied from Möllhausen. Now Möllhausen was posthumously copying Karl May. Those illustrations aren't a proper representation of Möllhausen's novels because they do not exhibit his particular strengths. The landscapes which Möllhausen had loved to draw and to describe are not present here. Möllhausen had himself drawn members of all indigenous nations and tribes he had met. He was able to differentiate the indigenous nations visually. His illustrator Adolf Wald was not, so they all look the same. Wald's illustrations focus on characters and drama, occasionally doing a good job. Unfortunately, Möllhausen's main characters are a lot less visual than Winnetou, Old Shatterhand, Allan Quatermain or Umslopogaas. Gustav Wandel, for example, is never actually described, so the illustrator just keeps drawing Leatherstocking instead, making Möllhausen's characters seem even more exchangeable and generic than they already are. Probably the most unusual thing about Möllhausen's Mandanenwaise is that it is told from the author's own perspective, using a first-person narrative, like Karl May would later. It actually begins as a continuation of Balduin Möllhausen's very own adventures of winter 1851 at Sandy Hill Creek. You can learn all about that in the last video. Having barely survived a blizzard, starvation, wolves, and being ambushed by hostile natives, young Balduin Möllhausen is finally saved and nurtured back to health by a group of Otos. Balduin becomes a friend of their chief Pawnee. Quatermain is also his tribe's medicine man, and he has in his possession a satchel which he carries along as strong medicine, and which Balduin suspects to work as some kind of good luck charm. This bag arouses Balduin's curiosity, because it does not look like a native's work at all, but rather like a white man's backpack. He persuades Quatermain's daughter to show him what's in the backpack. It's decorated with a peculiar scalp of black hair with a white strand. To his surprise, he also finds a manuscript written in his very own German language inside. He exchanges the manuscript with some paper of his own and puts the medicine bag back where it belongs. His betrayal is never found out, so Balduin and Quatermain can stay friends. Balduin, however, begins to read the manuscript he found, and this is where the actual story kicks in. The manuscript has been written by a German called Gustav Wandel, who was a young law student, when in spring 1832 in Bonn he made the acquaintance of the young woman Johanna. Keep in mind the year 1832, because it is going to be important for the historical background. Gustav Wandel is the adoptive son of an old veteran named Werker, who works as forestry official, but is called the lieutenant colonel by everyone. Young Gustav is at once smitten with the beautiful Johanna, even more so as it turns out that Johanna is his adoptive father's niece and is going to live with her uncle, Lieutenant Colonel Werker, as well. Lieutenant Colonel Werker, however, warns Gustav that he must never tell Johanna who her real parents were and what her mother almost did to her. Her father, Werker's brother Hans, once married an Italian woman. Hans Werker claimed that they had agreed to raise their children as Protestants, but once their first and only daughter Johanna was born, her parents became estranged of each other. Johanna's mother sought the counsel of some sinister Catholic priest she may or may not have also slept with. It is not said in the novel, but at least to me it seems implied that he has some strange psychological hold over her. Together, they kidnapped the young girl when Johanna still was a baby and abducted her to Italy to let her be raised in the true Catholic faith. Her husband Hans Werker was able to steal his daughter back and give her to adoptive parents unknown to his wife, so that his wife would never find her again. His wife soon after that died in sorrow, while Hans Werker, mad with grief, went away, presumably to seek death. Now that Johanna is finally able to live with her uncle, her only living blood relative, Gustav promises not to tell her what he has learned about her parents' fate. Why they think Johanna is better off not knowing, I have no idea, because Mölllhausen isn't making a very strong argument, or any in point of fact. Going for a walk to the old castle of Godestein with the beautiful Johanna, Gustav meets the mysterious Lady Brüsselbach, who seems hounded by the old castle's spirits and ghosts. She keeps addressing Gustav as Sir Knight and prophesies him within a lengthy song his bride is going to weep so many tears of sorrow they will become a stream. Within this stream Sir Knight will see his own reflection. But in the end, as prophesied by Lady Brüsselbach, he will marry her father's daughter. Gustav is not the only one smitten with his adoptive father's ward Johanna. His rival is Bernard, who is studying to become a Catholic priest. Gustav cannot stand him. Even greater is his surprise when Bernard invites him to become part of a secret society of students who plan to overthrow the government to install democracy and make Germany a better place for Johanna to live in. Gustav wholeheartedly agrees. While Bernard only acts in the background of the society, Gustav takes part in the historical Wachensturm of Frankfurt. On the 3rd of April 1833, he and his fellow students occupy the Guard of Frankfurt and announce a new German republic. They are overthrown on the very same day by the German military, since their plan had already been disclosed by a fellow conspirator. Gustav is captured and sentenced to lifelong prison for conspiracy and high treason. Even more devastated Gustav becomes on reception of a letter from his adoptive father, Lieutenant Colonel Werker. Werker denounces him as his adoptive son, not only because of the high treason he believes Gustav has committed, but also because he is convinced that Gustav and no one else has told Johanna about her parents, and has destroyed her by doing so. When months after that, with the unexpected help of a bribed guard, Gustav is able to escape the prison, his first direction is not the safe exile of a foreign country, but his hometown Bonn. At least once, a last time, he needs to see Johanna again to clear his name. Arriving at Bonn, but still hunted by the law, Gustav gets unexpected help by the crippled Anton. The crippled Anton may be little more but the city's idiot, but he has great sympathy for Gustav because he once saved his beloved tamed pet Raven from the fangs of Lieutenant Colonel Werker's dogs or hounds. Anton hides Gustav in his shack. He must be very cautious, though, because Anton's very own brother, the brutal Andres, is in cahoots with the malicious Bernard and a mysterious Catholic priest from Italy. Despite the difficulty, Anton arranges a meeting between Gustav and Lieutenant Colonel Werker. It has been Werker who had bribed the guard. It has been Werker who had managed to set Gustav free, but he could not possibly write Gustav before, because the prison warden would have opened his letters. Werker has already forgiven Gustav. He knows it was not him who told Johanna about her parents. Bernard had brought her together with this sinister Italian priest. Werker suspects him to be the very Catholic priest who tried to abduct Johanna and to bring her to Italy in the first place. This priest has told Johanna about her mother and has convinced her that her mother can only be saved from the flames of hell if her daughter is converted by the only and true Catholic faith as promised. Now Johanna is dying, because the sorrow about her mother and her guilt towards her mother is literally killing her. But for one last time the lieutenant colonel wants Gustav to meet his niece, hoping that if it will not make her better, it may at least help her to make peace with whatever god she may choose to make peace with. So they do meet for the last time, and I must excuse myself from summarizing it for you, because as badly written and kitschy as the dialogue obviously is, I must confess that it did have me in tears, getting a lump to my throat. I'm sorry. They meet and they part, and it's goodbye forever. Meanwhile, the authorities have already cut off Gustav from the only way to the boat that was supposed to bring him into the safety of a foreign country. Again, Gustav has to hide. He chooses a building formerly known as the Jesuitenhof. That's a nice little inside joke for everyone familiar with Balduin Möllhausen's life, because the Jesuitenhof, a building formerly owned by the Catholic Society of Jesus, was actually Mölllhausen's childhood home. Unsurprisingly, Gustav finds an 8-year-old boy there who insists that his parents help him flee. Yeah, that is Balduin Möllhausen, the author himself, in a cameo appearance. Finally, following the stream of the Rhine, first to Cologne, then crossing the border to Belgium, Gustav is able to make it into the safety of a ship, sailing from Le Havre to the United States of America. The first part of the book ends with Gustav having just finished writing down the account of the tragic circumstances forcing him into exile 3 years ago. In the meantime, he has become a voyageur of frontiersmen, making a living hunting and trapping and selling his furs to the St. Louis Fur Company. He is not alone, though. Living with him and helping him is the Mandan orphan, a girl he estimates to be about 14 years old. This is the first time the titular character is mentioned in the book. Since writing about his youth gave some much-needed closure, he is planning to write down the story of how he met her, too, but not before the next winter, once he may also have handed the girl over to the Presbyterian mission. Note, not every priest needs to be evil, as long as he is not Catholic. Now let's take a break and examine what we have read so far. The question of how a first-hand account of the historical Wachensturm of Cologne could possibly end up in an Oto chief's medicine bag makes for an intriguing mystery. The Oto camp of the prologue and the old castle in the Rhinelands provide great contrast and fascinating background. One of the novel's many problems, though, is its dialogue. Mölllhausen does not manage to let the lines he makes his characters speak tell us something about who they are. None of the characters has a voice of her own or his own. Instead, there is only Mölllhausen's voice for each and every one of the characters. And even by contemporary standards, Mölllhausen's dialogue seems overly lengthy and complicated, pompous, and not like anything any real person in any time that I know of might possibly say. And yeah, that's coming from me, so be warned. That being said, whenever it isn't dialogue what he's writing, it's actually a good read. The describing of scenery is very beautiful, the action captivating, though I must admit that until now there is very little action in it. But that is obviously going to change in the second part. The greatest problem, I believe, is the villains. We never get to know what reason the Catholic Bernard could possibly have to first conspire against the government and then getting all conspirators imprisoned. What is Bernard's actual goal in all of this? I could think of many, but we are never told even one. Then we are meant to believe that a Catholic priest has come all the way from Italy for no other reason than to literally pray a young woman to death. For what reason, if I may ask? What is in it for him? All those resources, intrigue and treachery just to bring one single German fieg back into the flock and then the sheep ends up dead on arrival? The only thing I am getting out of this is that 2 Catholic priests just happen to be inexplicably evil, but why, the novel does not tell. What I am getting out of this is that Mölllhausen for some reason hates Catholics. And there may be a good reason for doing so, but you won't find it anywhere inside Mölllhausen's novel where they are supposed to be the main villains. Problematic is also the account of the historical Wachensturm. Mölllhausen describes the Wachensturm of Cologne as somehow being both childish prank and high treason at the very same time. The only valid excuse he offers for Gustav to take part in it is that somehow he was tricked by a Catholic for unknown reasons. Standing up for democracy is not childish prank, and it may not even be high treason either. What you are hearing in the background is the song about the sensational escape of 3 students who had been imprisoned for taking part at the Wachensturm. A 4th student managed to escape very early after his imprisonment in 1833. Mölllhausen knew all of those stories and was influenced by them. But he should have listened to the song a lot closer. Then he might have realized how much sympathy the political goals of the conspirators actually had, even among his contemporary readers. The conspirators of the Wachensturm had valid political reasons for doing what they did, the same reasons which led to the German Revolution of 1848, the failure of which caused another wave of migration into the United States. But Mölllhausen does neither tell nor does he actually seem to care about what those political reasons were. Mölllhausen's Austrian predecessor, Charles Sealsfield, was a lot better in making political statements, an entertaining part of his frontier stories. And Friedrich Gersticker, even though he kept skeptical about any political belief whatsoever, wrote brilliant political pieces. His 1847 novella, A President's Election, about the downfall of the Whig Party, being one of them. Now that we keep talking about immigration almost daily, it would have been nice to possess a good and action-packed novel about what started mass immigration into the United States in the first place. Unfortunately, this book isn't it. The second part of the book begins with Gustav telling how he met the Mandan orphan. He has left St. Joseph in direction to the junction of the Yellowstone River and the Missouri, planning to hunt and, hopefully, trade his furs to the St. Louis Fur Company later. Now he is passing what used to be the grounds of Mandan tribes, which have already been almost extinguished, first by hostile Sioux, then by the smallpox. The Mandan smallpox outbreak of 1837 is an actual historical event. When Gustav passes by a Mandan village, he finds a lonely native girl mourning her parents and begging him for her death, since all her relatives and friends have already died before her eyes. But for some reason, the sickness has so far spared her. Gustav helps her to bury her dead and takes her with him, promising her to be her father from now on. She becomes his loyal companion. She likes to call herself the last of the Mandans, which is almost a literal citation of James Fenimore Cooper's well-known novel, which obviously Mölllhausen knew very well too. Gustav is even called Leatherstocking at some point. However, Mölllhausen has introduced a gender reversal. Uncas, the last of the Mohicans, was a male. Shanhata, because this is her name, is a female. It is a name Gustav can't really explain, because it is known in no Native American language. Obviously, Shanhata isn't pure Mandan at all, but has had a white father who was considered some kind of shaman or medicine man called Washicho, or the long knife. A tattoo on her shoulder in the shape of a red heart is the only sign she has kept from him. Traveling along the Missouri, Gustav and his adoptive daughter Shanhata are surprised to meet a young woman called Kate Dalefield. Mölllhausen's description of this Kate Dalefield is very interesting because he keeps repeating how she looks like a boy. She is clothed like a boy, she walks like a boy, and she talks like a boy. Gustav is at once smitten with her. Mölllhausen very often describes his love interests as transgressing established gender roles. The titular character of 1893's novel The Spy turns out to be a woman in disguise. The love interest of 1905's The Vaquero is not only clothed like a boy, but even running around on her bare feet. The character of Kate Dalefield, therefore, is no exception, but does in fact confirm a rule. She is even literally called an Amazon. However, as a character, she does not keep this title's promise. When it comes to the action, she very quickly becomes your average damsel in distress. It seems that Mölllhausen liked to stir the gender pot a little, but once the action kicks in, his female leads are Amazons in name only. The word Amazon might be a citation too. There is a character called the Amazon in the most important German coming-of-age novel, Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The Amazon Baroness Natalie proves to be an actual Amazon when she boldly faces some muggers and prevents the titular character from being beaten to death. Wilhelm Meister is at once smitten with her too. It would not be the only character from his novel having an obvious influence on a character of the Mandan orphan. Wilhelm Meister and Gustav Wandel are likewise torn between two women, an Amazon they're in love with, and an adoptive daughter who may or may not love him not only as a father, but also desire him as a man. Wilhelm Meister's Mignon is an exotic gypsy orphan, with her origin clouded in mystery. Note that gypsy is an offensive term. I use it only because the text uses it. Shanhata is an exotic indigenous orphan, with her origin clouded in mystery. Mignon might be Wilhelm's daughter and his beloved, and none of it at the same time, not a girl, not yet a woman. Shanhata might be Gustav's daughter and his beloved, and none of it at the same time, not a girl, not yet a woman. Goethe has written numerous songs and poems for his character Mignon. Those songs were composed by Ludwig van Beethoven, Franz Schubert, Robert Schumann, Franz Liszt, Ambroise Thomas, Peter Tchaikovsky, Hugo Wolf, Alban Berg, and literally countless others. In 19th century Europe, it was impossible not to know Mignon. It was impossible not to be influenced by her character. We'll see if the Mandan orphan is going to confirm this rule. Kate Dalefield, who mockingly calls Gustav Leatherstocking, has a problem. An expedition consisting of her father, Mr. Dalefield, her brother and 2 black servants are on their way to Fort Union. Their scouts are 2 American natives, one of which very recently has gone missing. Now they are afraid of being headed for a trap. Since Gustav is already smitten with the pretty Miss Dalefield, he agrees to go with them. But when he reveals to Kate his tragic past and the newly awakened love he feels for her, he is sorely disappointed to see her embarrassed and sad. Even though Shanhata seems jealous of her, she speaks to Kate on Gustav's behalf. Now Kate finally confesses that her heart is no longer free. The young Mandan orphan also awakes the interest of the remaining indigenous scout. The scout calls himself Blackbird and claims to be a chief of the Minitari. Gustav doubts that to be true, taking him for either a Blackfoot or a Sioux. Blackbird is very tall and well built, with a strand of white hair. Gustav's young Mandan squaw, that's an offensive term too, please don't use it, has aroused Blackbird's interest, and he offers Gustav a trade. The Indian girl Shanhata for the white girl Kate. Gustav realizes he has just been offered complicity of a crime the whole white family is supposed to be the victim of. He persuades Blackbird to give him the talking paper that he had been given to legitimate himself. The letter, written by some Sergeant Halbert, confirms Gustav's worst fears. It says that Blackbird is going to turn on his employers at the first sight of weakness, and Mr. Dalefield is not a strong leader. During the next break, Gustav surprises Blackbird when he is secretly answering a signal sent by the missing companion scout. With Gustav's gun pointed at him, Blackbird reveals himself as a Blackfeet chief and uses a sudden attack and the moment of surprise to flee into the night. Dalefield's party breaks camp at once and uses the night to reach for the Missouri. The white family takes cover on a small island in the Missouri when the Blackfeet attack. Using swimming islands both as cover and as distraction, the Blackfeet surround and attack the family, with losses on both sides. However, Kate Dalefield is even more fearful about a fireside nearby. It must be the party of Sergeant Halbert. He, she tells Gustav, is the man she loves, and the reason she undertook the troublesome journey in the first place. Halbert wanted to meet them near the Missouri, but if he comes across the Blackfeet alone, they are sure to kill him. Shanhata does not hesitate with a solution. She loves Gustav, Gustav loves Kate, and Kate loves Halbert. Despite her jealousy, she is going to try and break through the Blackfeet's ring and reach Sergeant Halbert in time to warn him. If she reaches the fire, she will first cover it, then let it burn again, as a sign that she has made it through. As she leaves off into the night, Kate and Gustav remain in sorrow. Soon after that, the fire is covered, and after a painfully long pause, burns again. Shanhata has reached Sergeant Halbert. Halbert and his soldiers are very soon joining the battle, with Shanhata following them. Again, Blackbird tries to kill Gustav and take Shanhata for himself. Halbert, Gustav and the remaining soldiers and Dalefields build a raft and finally manage to escape the Blackfeet on it. Now that they have reached safety, Gustav wants to hand Shanhata over to the Dalefields, so they may give her savior an education and a future Gustav would never be able to give her. Shanhata denies and demands to rather be killed than be forced to leave her beloved Gustav. Now once Gustav is finally realizing his own true feelings for her, his manuscript suddenly breaks off. Balduin Möllhausen, back at the Otto village, is left with numerous questions. Since he has already found the black scalp with the white strand, he has no doubt it belonged to Blackbird. He asks Quatermain how he got it. Quatermain shows him how he killed Blackbird by stabbing his knife into the earth several times. But if Blackbird had been killed while he had the manuscript in his possession, it seems safe to assume that Gustav and probably Shanhata as well had been already killed by then too. Several months later, after having reached St. Louis, Balduin Möllhausen passes a farm with plain children and a rare and special sight, a long-stemmed pipe, obviously coming from Germany. Since Balduin has already stared at it a little too long, the owner asks him in to offer his compatriot dinner. Dinner is served by the mother of the house, a very beautiful half-indigenous woman, going by the name of Jeannette. Balduin realizes that of all farmhouses in the West, he has been asked into that of Gustav and Shanhata. Now that's a coincidence worthy of Karl May if I ever read one. But it gets even better. Now Balduin reveals himself to be the very young boy who once saved Gustav from being captured by the authorities back in Bonn. Of course, Gustav is happy to tell Balduin how they managed to escape Blackbird's wrath. Soon after parting with the Dalefields, Gustav and Shanhata had returned to their little shack. They planned to take as much as they could carry, and then leave as quickly as they could, because they feared the Blackfeet seeking revenge for their losses. At the day of their departure, Blackbird leads the raid on the shack, and has abducted both Gustav and Shanhata. While Gustav is supposed to be tortured to death, Blackbird claims Shanhata as his personal share for being the leader of the successful raid. His claim, however, is challenged by a young Blackfeet warrior, who insists that the decision to whom Shanhata is going to belong must be left to their shaman. Gustav and Shanhata are carried to their village and brought before the medicine man. Watching the shaman's eyes, Gustav can tell the man must be an insane fanatic. One half of his face is painted blue, the other red. But what intrigues Gustav the most is the fact that the shaman has a beard that's been tinged red with cinnabar. Gustav is even more surprised when the white medicine man asks him in German if he believes in prophecy. Gustav answers, "If you're a white man, why the disguise?" Let it suffice to say, I don't know the white people. I don't want to know them. I am red. Now answer my question. Do you believe in prophecy? At first, Gustav takes the shaman for a lunatic, until what seems a madman to him tells him Shanhata's real name. Her name is Jeannette, and the crazy medicine man is all that's left of her father. But he is in fact not only the father of the Mandan orphan, but also of the deceased Johanna. When he had entered the hunting grounds of the Mandans many years ago, he was mad both with grief and paranoia, fleeing the sight of any white man, seeing Catholic priests or Jesuit spies in any white face. The natives took him for a madman, whose mind was used by the gods, and made him their shaman because of it. Only now that he has seen his daughter Jeannette, reason is slowly coming back to him. so he is able to tell Gustav his real name. He is, or he used to be, Hans Werker, Lieutenant Colonel Werker's lost brother, and he asks of Gustav to trust him, so maybe he might be able to save them. And the next day, Blackbird offers Gustav the choice to either die at the stake or to save his life and take as squaw one of the old women who lost their husband because of him. Under the ridicule and snare of the whole tribe, Gustav agrees with the latter proposition to win time. In the following night, Hans Werker brings paint to dye Gustav's face black and loses his bonds. But still, they have to free Jeanette, who is guarded by Blackbird himself. Blackbird, however, has just understood his medicine man had read Gustav's manuscript and suspects them to be in cahoots with each other. When Blackbird reaches for the manuscript, the untied Gustav uses the element of surprise to subdue him. Too proud to call for help, Blackbird lets Gustav gag him, bind and imprison him, keeping nothing but his manuscript. The medicine man Hans Werker has already provided 4 horses to ensure the couple's flight. They, however, insist that he comes with them. After 4 days of riding, they finally reach the safety of the Missouri, where they soon set up a farm. Jeanette receives the holy baptism and is married to Gustav. Lady Brüsselbach's prophecy has finally come true. Gustav has not married Johanna, but he has married her father's daughter. Even Hans Werker comes to his full senses again when he can bounce his first granddaughter Johanna on his knees. He dies a peaceful death a few years later. His brother, the Lieutenant Colonel Werker, dies in the same year, not without having left a substantial sum to the crippled Anton and his pet Raven, who had once helped Gustav Wandel to flee. Kate Dayfield has married Sergeant Halbert, their parents of 4 children. Finally, Gustav and Jeanette give Balduin Möllhausen their consent to publish Gustav's manuscript, provided that its title shall be The Mandan-Orphan. Thus ends the novel. If you're thinking that there are far too many crazy coincidences in this novel, you're definitely thinking the same thing I have been thinking. But if Möllhausen's contemporary readers would have thought the same, I'm not so sure. Firstly, there's something you can't have gotten from my summary, and that's the fact that the shaman Hans Werker's description is the most elaborate of the whole novel. Möllhausen manages to describe the shaman's attire with so much authentic details in it, it almost seems real, or say halfway possible. Secondly, if anything, I believe the contemporary readers might have criticized Möllhausen for following his greater example, the already mentioned Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, just a little too closely. In Wilhelm's company, there is a man called the Old Harpist. He calls himself a failed holy man, a monk who failed to keep his vows. Obviously, he is deranged and mystified, but Wilhelm Meister's actor friends like to keep him around because they also consider his madness to be a vessel of divine wisdom. The natives keep Hans Werker around for very much the same reason. At the end of the novel, however, the old harpist comes to his senses, shaves off his beard, and reveals himself not only as the former rich salesman Augustin, but also, you guessed it, as Mignon's father. The shaman is Möllhausen's old harpist, just as Jeanette is Möllhausen's Mignon, and Gustav Wandel is Möllhausen's Wilhelm Meister. Gustav Wandel and Wilhelm Meister have many things in common. Both have so-called talking names. The name of Meister suggests that Wilhelm would like to be master of his fate. He just doesn't at first succeed. The name of Wandel suggests both a state of change and a state of being errant, which may be why Lady Brüsselbach perceives him to be some errant knight. Both have made mistakes in their past. Wilhelm has lost his first love too, an actress who also worked as a prostitute and died in childbirth. Just like Gustav, Wilhelm feels partly responsible for her death. Gustav has wanted to be a revolutionary. Wilhelm has wanted to be an actor until he realized he prefers to make his mark on the real world instead. Admittedly, Gustav's coming of age, even though it contains a lot more action, seems a lot less insightful and interesting as compared to Wilhelm Meister's. What I do like about the Mandan Orphan is that it contains an alternate version of Mignon's fate, in that Mölllhausen's Mignon, or Jeannette, is able to find some happiness in the end and marry the man she loves. I believe many other readers would have wished that for Goethe's Mignon too. In Goethe's novel, Mignon ends up dying in sorrow, while Wilhelm Meister gets to marry his Amazon baroness, Natalie. But as a reader, we never actually get to know or to like Natalie as much as we care for Mignon. This is what makes her death such a sad part of the story. One of her songs, particularly the line, "Was hat man dir, du armes Kind, getan? Poor child, what have they done to you?" Lump to my throat, seems to suggest that she has also suffered some probably sexual abuse. This dimension is missing from Mölllhausen's Mandan Orphan. Now, seeing her getting everything that Mignon ever wanted, her adoptive father and protector finally becoming her husband too, it actually makes her somewhat lesser for it. Once they were not a girl, not yet a woman, and with all their exotic heritage on top of that, both Mignon and Jeannette had seemed multi-dimensional and fascinating. Now, having become a simple American housewife, Jeannette suddenly seems one-dimensional, exchangeable and boring, and I do feel some strange kind of relief Goethe's Mignon was spared this fate. Perhaps we do need Mignon to die so that she can continue to mirror our very own tortured inner child. Balduin Möllhausen's novel The Mandan Orphan can be read online for free on zeno.org. If you want to buy it as a book, be warned that many editions have been severely cut. An uncut version of the book based on the online text can be ordered as a print on demand over tradition.de as a cheap paperback for €20 or as a hardcover for 36. A very beautifully illustrated facsimile version in German-type Gothic fractured letters can be ordered for €40 at finesmundi.de. All those versions are in German language only. I have paid €20 for my paperback edition, and this is exactly what I believe this novel is worth.